Hey everyone, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture and a little animation review today. I don't know, is this forgotten? It might be forgotten. Animalympics, 1980. Have you guys seen this? Interesting little cartoon with some interesting stuff about it that's not necessarily about the cartoon, but kind of is. Well, anyways. So this is an animated movie, essentially, directed by Steven Lisberger for NBC back in 80. So you figure they were animating it, recording voices in probably 78, 79, somewhere in there. And it is essentially cartoon animals competing in sporting events, sort of like the Summer Olympics, Winter Olympics combined. So let's jump in. I got some nice still frames of this, and we could take a look at the animation, some of the people behind it, and maybe the broader cultural impact of this cartoon. And I guess technically there's going to be spoilers through this, although this is not really a cartoon with a heavy narrative or plot. There's a little. It's more a collection of vignettes done for comedy and, but not entirely just comedy. So, can I really spoil it? Not so much. It's one of those where you just really need to watch the cartoon and, see the animation to really get it. But let's jump in. So we start with maybe the most early 80s looking intro to a cartoon ever. You have these sort of glowing vector shapes of like a satellite, beaming energy down to planet Earth, or beaming, data, I guess, down to planet Earth. It transforms through several shapes. Kind of looks like something out of a Molly Hatchet laser light show, though. And we get Lisberger Studios Incorporated. So that's like your little intro before the animation really gets moving, although, of course, that's animated. So we begin with a lonely mountain topped by what looked like ancient Greek ruins. And there's a voiceover here that sounds a little bit like Curt Gowdy. If you know, you know. Within the mountain is a slumbering dragon, and a little, humanoid figure is in there trying to ignite a torch with this fiery breath. And he ultimately is successful. And so the narrator, in all creatures, great and small, there resides the spirit of athletic competition. And again, if you know who Curt Gowdy is, you'll pick up the voice. Now, the voice is being done, I believe Harry Shearer's doing that particular voice. Character is Keen Hacksaw. And at least I think, let me look at my notes. Was that? Yeah, Harry Shearer for sure. You'll know Harry Shearer from Simpsons and about a dozen other things back in the day. So we get this little voiceover about animals, competition. Now we see the torch being carried down the mountainside and through the icy north. So it's going to be through a succession of different animals. We get this dude going through a blazing desert, maybe a little bit of a nod to Wile E. Coyote. Goes across the ocean on the nose of like a seal. Again, the voiceover, further, faster, Furrier, the motto of the competing continents of these first games. And now live via satellite, Animalympics. And so from the very start, they're doing a good job of imitating kind of what Olympic coverage looked like back in the day. And I suppose it's probably not that different now. And so there's definitely an element of parody to it, kind of parodying how sports broadcast went. It's presented by ZOO, the network that brings out the beast in sports. And so the parody aspect is kind of a good and a bad thing. There are things in this cartoon you're not going to necessarily get if you're not like Gen X, if you weren't, around for those time periods. But on the other hand, it's also, there's also lots of other stuff that'll resonate, and it's not like so completely weird that you're going to be like, what is this? Is this some kind of a metal made out of gold? I mean, you'll get a lot of this stuff. So music in this one, and we're going to just look at a few of the credits. Composed, performed by Graham Gouldman of 10cc. He's bassist, co-founder of the group. Good stuff. The music in it, it's kind of chill. It's sort of a little bit yacht rocky, if you want to use a term that maybe doesn't really exist. But it's good. It's kind of chill. It works. Featuring the voices of Gilda Radner, Billy Crystal, Harry Shearer, Michael Furrier. Now, Furrier was involved in the animation. He's probably not as well known like as a voice artist, but of course, Gilda Radner's coming off like SNL. Billy Crystal was I don't know if he was on SNL yet. He was maybe either was or was heading towards it. But I mean, I think maybe aside from, well, even the more recent generations probably know him as the voice from Monsters, Inc. of Mike Wachowski. Isn't that his name? I think. Yeah, Harry Shearer did a ton of stuff, he did some like Laverne and Shirley. I think he did some SNL, etc. So these are people who were pretty much known at the time, and they're mostly doing kind of like, celebrity impersonation sort of stuff. I mean, a little bit, not entirely. So art direction. This is where the talent aspect really comes in on this thing. Roger Allers provides the art direction and animation in this thing on a character named Kit Mambo, and you'll see her later. He will also later go on to direct The Lion King, pretty well-known piece of animation. Bill Kroyer, animation director here, he's going to go on to direct Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, which I know for a lot of millennials is kind of important, and maybe some of the younger Gen Xers. So that pretty decent credit. The animation has a really great style. It's very of its time, but they did take the time and effort to put into it to get a good, flow, good fluid movements, which is important if you're sort of depicting sports and such. Brad Bird, you see up there, worked as a story editor on The Simpsons, later wrote and directed The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Ratatouille. Oh, and geez, yeah, Simpsons. Harry Shearer had some major stuff on Simpsons too. So directed by Steven Lisberger, who went on to conceive, co-write, and direct a little movie called Tron. And you remember that sort of glowing, vectory looking stuff at the beginning, and they're going to do other stuff with that. You go, oh yeah, that's kind of a connection to Tron, that look. So, it's kind of a silly little cartoon. Animals competing in sports. There's some real good talent behind this thing. So Animal Olympic Island is the setting for these first games. And this character here is called Henry Hummel, who sounds like Henry Kissinger, voiced by Michael Furrier. And though kids nowadays would not get this reference in a million years, but back in 1980, like kids were super into Henry Kissinger. Okay, we weren't, but he was impersonated all over the place, and so we probably would have gotten the reference. But it does also indicate that even back in 1980, this was not intended like solely for a kid audience. There's plenty in this to entertain kids. The physical comedy aspect, the more parody satire stuff is more for adults. And so Hummel is showing us some of the events they're going to be bringing us, including the marathon, which is going to pit Africa's Kit Mambo. You remember I brought her up before, who is voiced by Michael Furrier, against Europe's René Fromage, also voiced by Furrier. The marathon event is going to serve as sort of, it's going to be a running event going through the entire games. They're going to be, checking in on these runners in this marathon. And the idea is like it's supposed to be like a 9-day race. So, I mean, these are cartoon animals, so everything's got to be a little more extreme. And the marathon stuff's going to be brought to us by Barbara Warblers, who's like some kind of bird, voiced by Gilda Radner, essentially doing her Baba Wawa voice from SNL. They take off with Barbara Walters, and again, totally lost on a lot of younger people nowadays. But, you know, we knew what this stuff was then. So we're going to get the story of ice skater Dory Turnell. We're going to get Keen Hacksaw bringing us gymnastics, and Eurasia's Tatiana Chachinko. Bobsledding featuring Europe's famous Calamari brothers. Brenda Springer, also voiced by Gilda Radner, bringing us swimming with California's Dean Wilson. Kurt Wolfner in slalom and downhill skiing. Like I said, it mixes summer and winter with this one. There was apparently, they were going to do them separate, and they decided just to combine it. It was probably smart. Ruggs Turco, Billy Crystal doing a Howard Cosell voice, brings track and field with exciting young track star Bolt Jenkins. We get soccer, the New York Rats, brought to us by Melee. So we get everything started with the lighting of the massive Olympic torch, and it is going to start all these vignettes of different sporting events. And we see here the mayor of Animal Olympic Island, which is a Nixon bit. Okay. They were obsessed with Nixon back in the day. This is 1980 at this point, but we get Nixon up there. Let the fur fly. And we get, of course, the actual torch, and you see how big it is, because this is a cartoon, so everything's got to be, extreme. Main narrative here is, for the whole cartoon, is the majesty of sport, the concept of different people coming together in peace through friendly competition, which is what they were pushing all the time. So our first event, marathon. We're introduced to Renee Fromage of Europe, who is always training and has no time for women. We see this cow chasing him through the countryside. And Kit Mambo of Africa, the first woman who may beat a man in this marathon event. And they're going to be cutting back and forth to these two throughout. And so this brings up another aspect of this cartoon. This is something I read a long time ago. I first saw this thing when I was working at the video store. So that would have been like the late 80s, early 90s. It was sometime after that I read a thing that said that this movie was very, very big in the furry community. It may have been foundational to the furry community. A lot of sharing of this at conventions or what have you. I don't know for sure if that is true. I'm sure it's at least somewhat true, because what you do get in this is, well, depictions of athletes, human bodies, animal heads. And obviously you can see from Kit Mambo, you kind of understand where that might be coming from. At any rate, other competitors, of course, in the marathon. And you note with this one, there are like women and men competing in the same event. Some of the events in this thing are like women, some are men. Sometimes they combine the two. It's a cartoon, so it doesn't really matter. They only have so much time. And so that starts off the marathon, right? Nothing major. Off they go. So we then transfer over to gymnastics and the floor exercises. Keen Hacksaw is joined by North American favorite mink, Coralie Perrier, voiced by Gilda Radner. And she's like, kind of posing the whole time while he's doing this. And there is so an aspect of, you're doing sports, but you're kind of doing, they're kind of parodying other things, models. There's one that's sort of, that they're going to do kind of like a Mr. America thing. You'll see as we go through it. So one of the things you got with Olympic coverage then and now are these sort of, let's get up close and personal with the athletes, which a lot of us are going, no, let's watch more of the actual sports. I don't really care that much. You do get that in here. Here we see Tatiana Chachinko and her story, which starts off training at a very young age. That would be while she is still, being carried by her mother. And then we actually, get to see her doing her floor exercises. The animation really had to be fluid here, and they do a very good job of doing this. And you can see also, though, there is a Looney Tunes sort of aspect to it. I mean, the way she's, basically her body is moving around her maybe her legs, I should say, are moving around her torso. So it does keep it funny. We see her coach, who's a little bit worried. He's the Eurasian coach. Eurasians, i.e. the Soviet Union. if you didn't do well in the Olympics for the Soviet Union, and I know Iraq had that problem too, things could go very bad for you personally. So he's very, very worried, but it's a perfect 10. We now have a little bit of the vault competition. Ilse Blintz of Europe, which is obviously a little bit more cartoony, Hippo doing the vault. I love this little shot of her teaching swimming to little Hippo kids in a fat camp. At any rate, so here she is ready to do the vault. And you notice that she's actually vaulting off of a real horse. And at one point, they kind of zoom in on the horse, and he turns around and sees who's coming at him. And he's a little bit freaked out. The vault is actually pretty decent, but only a 4.5. And we see her very sad on the bench next to Tatiana, who is, looking very aloof to her suffering. We now get a floor exercise with Bruce Kwakamoto of Asia. And it's sort of like a kung fu karate looking thing. And we see here some still shots of him and his training. Pretty funny. And then the uneven parallel bars involving a Eurasian elephant, Ludmila Stepanyatova. Yeah, Stepanyatova, get it. Who happens to also be circus folk and married to a weightlifter who we're going to see later in the competition. So she's swinging around these parallel bars, and momentum, gravity sort of get the better of her, and it doesn't ultimately go that well. So Tatiana and Eurasia walk away with gold for the event. This gives you kind of a little idea. And she's gold for the women. Gives you an idea how they're flipping through different events. The animation is good. It's very cartoony. It is funny. Bruce Kwakamoto gets gold for the men, and he sort of does a bow and accidentally clunks the mare on the head, and he goes down. So again, they keep it funny. We then get this tour of Animal Olympic Island, built on the lost continent of Atlantis with these guys up there. And again, this kind of stuff always drove me nuts in the real Olympics, because it's like, show the sports. So it once again throws it to the marathon. 14-day marathon that I have in my notes, which is again sprinkled through. And this is the moment where Kit Mambo pulls even with Renee Fromage. And so they're going to be running even through most of this marathon. All right. We now see a few of the sites on the island, and there's like this fashion show showing different athletes and their outfits. And they're designed by Enrico Pucci. Hey, this is definitely part of the 70s, early 80s kind of vibe, kind of look. We go to figure skating, leading off with the Kralonoffs from Eurasia, a married couple. And then we get Dory Turnell, the flamingo. They're kind of going for a Dorothy Hamill thing with her, and all the popularity and how well she was known. And Dorothy Hamill was like huge at the time. All the girls are getting the Dorothy Hamill haircut, apparently including my wife at the time. We weren't married. We were just kids back then. And so the performance, utilizes the obviously kind of long, gangly appearance of a flamingo. And then at the end, she goes into this really tight spin, and you can see feathers flying off her. And then she's sort of like, just like in her, underwear, and she rushes off and comes back really quickly with a robe on. So you kind of get the idea here of the comedy. So track and field, hosted by the Howard Cosell sounding turkey. The focus here, at least initially, is on Bolt Jenkins. Sounds like John Travolta. And this bit's kind of notable because we get our first song from Graham Gouldman in it. That's kind of like talking about how Bolt Jenkins was born on the bad side of town. Obviously, he lives in a sewer. And he's talking, there's a little bit of a voiceover from him talking about what inspired him to go into sports. And so they go into the high jump, and this is going to be Bolt's first, big event. And it's against a guy called Boris Amphibiansky, like a frog. Goes badly for Boris there. You could see him. He kind of gets hung up on the pole, which then falls, and that's him sliding down back to the ground. They're trying to clear over 70 feet. Bolt Jenkins manages to do it without any real trouble. Although doesn't quite stick the landing, because that little dude down there, thinks he's not going to hit the pad, so he moves it, and then of course he hits the ground next to it. And so then he also aces the pole vault. I guess that was the high jump. Did I say high jump? I might have said pole vault. Well, he also aces the pole vault, leading immediately to a celebrity endorsement, toasted gecko flakes. And you can't really see it in this shot, but the little badge on the refrigerator back there is like the brand name is Colder Nell. Colder than hell. You got you. Okay. That's classic animation stuff, though. You get that stuff like in, Tex Avery, Bob Clampett. So good stuff. And then we obviously see Bolt getting the gold medal. And so now we flip to a montage of other track and field events and another song. It's very mellow, Now that we've made it to the top. Do-do-do. Okay. So we get the cycling, we get the competitive walking, we get the relay with these skunks. We get, I'm not sure what the sport is. It involves canes and a ball and basically just beating the crap out of one another. Back to the cycling. And this is a really great shot. It's this dude, you see the movement in the background and he's kind of like turning his head to see, how close the competition is to him. Really well animated. We get the javelin with this rhino. We get the shot put with like this longhorn bull. There's the running competition. It's like the steeplechase or something where they got to go over these walls. And this is a tiger going over this wall and then finding that somehow it goes about 60 feet down into this water. And that's him freaking out. And the animation reminded me just a little bit of Bedknobs and Broomsticks. We see this moose crossing the finish line, the hammer throw. And this all leads into the 100-meter dash, which they actually focus on, pitting Bolt against an older champ. And you can see how you got all the runners there, and then they start suiting up like it's for a drag race. And you'll see them as they're prepping, their legs kind of turn into looks like wheels almost, which classic Looney Tunes stuff. And in fact, when they start running, they almost turn into these dragsters. And this kind of leads to another theme, because the old champ has this really bad start, but he catches up and almost wins. Bolt just beats him by a nose. And Bolt's kind of looking depressed that he got the gold. And he's like, I can't take this thing. I didn't really earn it. So, because the guy had a bad start. It wasn't his fault. So he gives the gold to this dude who was kind of a hero of his. And so this is kind of the good sportsmanship angle that we get from this thing. So back to the marathon on the fourth day of running. And the two competitors here that are tied at the moment are picturing themselves getting the gold. And then their little thought bubbles see each other and they're getting kind of angry at first, but then, Kit's like, although I do have to admit, he is kind of cute, and it's, is the resolve changing? Because the little Reme Fromage is like, what, did she just blow me a kiss? What is happening here? So then we get another little excerpt of the, off the field antics at the Noah's Ark disco. Remember the time period. It makes sense. The DJ for the evening spinning a solid groove called Go For It. Go for it. Do, something like that. While everybody's dancing and all this stuff, and they spotlight some of the characters, Tatiana, Bruce Quakimoto. Also, you do have some platypuses look like they're drinking beer. I don't know, maybe that would offend some people nowadays in a kid's cartoon. I don't think it offended anybody really back then. Obviously, if you got a character that sounds like John Travolta and you're in a disco, you got to do a little bit of Saturday Night Fever. And the background is awesome. And again, great animation throughout and really great character design. The skunks here, which I guess were the relay team, kind of reminiscent of that dance troupe that Fred Rerun Barry was a part of. He did What's Happening, and he'd show up on Soul Train and everything. So really great stuff. Now we flip on to soccer, the European All-Stars, who are like wiener dogs, versus the New York Rats. This is a match that was played yesterday. And of course the Rats are cheating and they actually end up losing because of it. And then today's match is the South American Llamas versus the European All-Stars. Ultimately, the All-Stars win it 2-1. There's this great, we get the Pele bicycle kick, because they steal the ball and blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. And so they win the gold. And then, when the guy's not paying attention, the New York Rat down there steals the gold medal. So you get the idea of these little vignettes. Marathon is heating up. We get a little musical interlude about René Fromage and his dedication to sport. Yes, he's smoking a cigarette. He is French, for crying out loud, and he's in Paris, and it's 1980. And nobody really freaked out about this kind of stuff. We go to the skiing, and here's another character who you could see was maybe popular with the furry community. Miss Pedigree North America, Brenda Springer, with former all-Scandinavian ski champion and now film star Bjorn Friborg, this horse. And dude, they do like an Ingmar Bergman bit here with the movie that he's in, and his Swedish accent freaking kills me. And so the big story here is about Kurt Wolfner, European. We see him win the slalom over Jimmy Ribbit, or Jimmy Ribbit for Bjorn. And this leads to a news break because Wolfner has gone missing before the big downhill competition. He was off hiking in the mountains. He's a man who likes a challenge. What will happen? So this is another little story, kind of like the marathon, that will play out over a couple different segments. We go to bobsledding and the Calamari brothers, and they're sort of like Italian. And the track is kind of like this, kind of like a roller coaster almost. And you see them kind of hitting the top and then, Mamma Mia. And it's pretty funny, actually. So back to Kurt Wolfner. He, and this is a musical number. He's trapped in a blizzard up in the mountains. And he ends up discovering Doggerlaw and filled with beautiful dog women. And he might just give up skiing here. We don't know if we're going to see him again. Ice hockey bit is friggin' great. North American Kodiaks versus the Eurasian Shorthorns, like the Soviet Union. It's like Canada versus Soviet Union, kind of. And they do it sort of in the style of this World War I trench warfare, and the coach of the Kodiaks says, you'll have to destroy them. They are the enemy. And so at one point, they're all huddled over there, and you hear somebody like scream, and this dude's like, "They got Harry. I'll get them for this." And he jumps over and goes through, the competition and ends up scoring and winning the game. And so North America wins gold, even though he ends up in the hospital. Off to the swimming portion, we get a look at the swinging West Coast life of Dean Wilson, who's got sort of this Valley Guy kind of surfer voice. And again, you can sort of see the appeal to the furry set. Dude, some great stuff in his little life story. Cruising in the van. I love it. It's so California. Kind of getting zen, it's the surfer culture. So we're joined then at the poolside by former champion Mark Spritz, play off of Mark Spitz. And the field for the 100-meter freestyle, very interesting, includes Oh No No No, the great Asian champion, the main competition for Dean. But Dean doesn't look worried there. And in fact, as they're going and making that turn, at the end of the pool, Ono causes essentially like a tidal wave, which looks like it's going to wipe Dean out. But in fact, he's going to ride it like a surfboard. We then go into like a 100-meter dive, which you get this trippy song, with Dean, because he's kind of goes off into his own world, man, and it's very cool animation. Some of the imagery reminds me of the SpongeBob movie when they're going through the trench and there's all those weird creatures, now that we're men, we can grow facial hair. Yeah, okay, it's that little bit there. Again, kind of cool, trippy, yacht rocky sort of music. I kind of dig it. I remember when I saw it when I was younger, it didn't really register, but I do like it now. And I know I'm going way too long into this thing, but there's so many characters, so many vignettes that they pack in. I can't believe the amount of work they had to do, on designing all this stuff. And you kind of want to show so much of it because it looks great. There's a bit with this boar who's, in the downhill event, who was injured dirt biking. And there's kind of like a bionic man thing going on with it. But ultimately in the downhill event, Kurt Wolfner shows back up like on this hang glider, lands, does the downhill, manages to win. And then he's like, I'm going back to Dogger Law. We see the marathon again at the 3/4 mark. And the mental barriers have come down between Renee and Kit. And they kind of have a little thing going there out on the marathon. We get a basketball bit with Dr. Abdul Jones of North America taking gold over Eurasia. We get boxing, which has Crystal doing both Cosell and a Muhammad Ali impersonation. We get this volleyball game, lobsters versus chickens. It's actually pretty funny. The chickens are all they're like ganged up in a group. And so as the ball's going, the whole group moves over to it, and there's a kind of noise. You got the weightlifting. This is that elephant who was married to the one in the gymnastics. It looks like it's like combining weightlifting with bodybuilding. I remember the Pumping Iron movie, crowning first Mr. Heavyweight. Really funny. Oh my God, there's like this. The former Mr. Heavyweight is his horse, and he comes up onto the stage, and then he does this little smile that friggin' kills me. The fencing bit is awesome because it's like a movie style swashbuckling duel where this boar, Maurice Bordeaux, has beaten the one champion and, kind of cheating, he's, nobody can defeat me. And then all of a sudden appearing above is the Countess, and you see Bordeaux, the Countess. And they go into this big battle and she ultimately beats him. It's really great. So then we get this little song about the Kit Renee romance. With you, I can run forever. And it leads into the controversial ending for the marathon where they cross the line together and they just keep on going. Their coaches are freaking out because they were planning on making lots of money off these guys. And they're like, they don't care anymore. And so that ends the competition on Animal Olympic Island. We get a wrap up from Keen Hacksaw about excellent performance, sportsmanship, and true love. And the flame is snuffed out. And Kit and Renee run into the sunset. And that is the extraordinary little film of Animalympics. If you are into animation, I highly suggest this one. It's not very long. It keeps moving pretty well. The animation's really, really, really good. It's a lot of funny little vignettes. The music's pretty cool. I think kids could watch it. I don't think there's nothing in it that's like going to destroy your kid. If he sees like a cigarette in this dude's mouth, it's not going to destroy him, I don't think. I mean, if you're really worried about that stuff, so be it. But I think especially if your kids are into sports, they might really kind of dig it. But I think for adults, there's a lot of funny stuff in it, a lot of nostalgia for people my age, especially, with Howard Cosell voices and all that kind of stuff. But it is really well done. It really is well done. Worth a watch. If this is one that you remember, that you enjoyed, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this little video review of Animalympics, maybe give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. It's the Animalympic spirit. Have a little bit of fun. Give Animalympics a watch. I found it on YouTube, sneaking around. I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. It's probably for sale somewhere as well. But give it a watch. I think it will be worth your time. And I'll hopefully see you again soon. Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.